What's up guys, it is Austin Black here back with another video about the Sony FX9. I am very excited to talk to you guys about my hands-on experience with this camera through the month of January. So I got this camera New Year's Eve. What a great way to start the new year with a huge investment and a great camera to really learn and begin to master. I haven't really scratched the surface on everything this camera can do, but I think I've got a good base of experience to talk to you guys a little bit more about what it's like on the job, on set, and what my first impressions are. So I have filmed a wedding this month, I filmed lots of real estate this month, I've done some kind of documentary, maybe like HGTV style shooting, kind of on the shoulder, walk and talk type stuff. I've done a corporate shoot, so I think I've got a pretty good base of experience, and so far I am very impressed with this camera, with the images that this camera is putting out, the richness of the colors, and the dynamic range, especially when you compare it to the Sony Alpha series. Now, once I get a little bit more time and I spend some time doing some side-by-side comparisons, I'm going to do a full video comparing the Sony a7 III and really Sony Alpha cameras in general to this camera, the FX9, the top-end camera in Sony's FS/FX lineup. So I'm mostly going to be focusing in this video about a wedding that Kristen and I shot. I have edited a trailer for it. Now, I do want to preface this by saying this wedding wasn't a long wedding, it wasn't a super extensive wedding, it was kind of a last-minute thing that we were even shooting it, but I was very excited for the opportunity to put the cameras through its paces in a somewhat simple environment. So I'm gonna roll the trailer for that wedding right now. And I'm gonna say as well that YouTube's compression does tear this apart a little bit. So I'm gonna leave a link in the description to Vimeo because I think Vimeo is gonna look a little bit better.
We've been together for almost 2 years now, but I still get butterflies when I see you. And I feel like our relationship is just as passionate as the first month we were dating.
I'm so honored and so excited to become your husband today, and in the words of Bleachers, let's get married.
Touch your skin. Something in your eyes moving with the tide.
Leo, you may kiss the bride.
Okay, so in the last video, I shot most of my test footage in the s-cinetone profile, and I kind of thought that that was where I was going to be shooting most of my footage, but lately I've been really loving the image I'm getting with the S-Log3 picture profile and the ARRI Alexa Phantom LUTs. Those LUTs really make the image look a lot better than the stock LUT that Sony gives you from their website. I'm really liking what I can do with these, so that's been what I've been shooting lately. S-cinetone I think is still a great option if you're needing to turn something really quickly or you're needing to hand that footage off to somebody else who may not have the experience color grading, but S-Log3 I think is how you get the best image out of this camera. But overall, from a color perspective, that's one of the things that I'm most happy about with this camera. And overall, just when I look at the images, my overall interpretation of them compared to Sony Alpha cameras is that they look much richer and much deeper. When I look at the A7 III images, a lot of the detail is there, but they look kind of over sharpened, over contrasty, overly punchy. Whereas the FX9 has this very smooth look to them, and the colors and details look very rich without looking super punchy and sharpened. The variable ND is a game changer, especially when you couple it with the dual native ISO. That turns it into a whole different ball game, and it basically allows you to dial in your settings no matter where you are. So if you're in a lower light situation, and let's say you want to stop down to f4, flip on that high base ISO. If you need to punch in a little bit of ND, you have the ability to do that, but you can basically smoothly dial in whatever settings make the most sense for that circumstance. I also felt like because of this variable ND that the zooms were really useful. So if I just threw the camera into 4K 60 Super 35 mode and threw the Tamron 28 to 75 2.8 on this camera, it was just a beast. I was just getting shots so quickly, and the images were looking really great. Speaking of the 4K 60 Super 35 crop mode, one of my gripes with this camera is that it is very slow to switch between full frame 6K 24p to Super 35 4K 60. You have to actually reboot the camera to make that switch over to slow motion, and then you have to go into the menu twice to switch it back to full frame 4K 24p. So it's a very slow process. That is something that I'm gonna have to get used to, because I just had a little dial on the A7 III where I could quickly switch between slow motion and 24p. So that's a little bit of a problem right now that I'm working through a little bit, but obviously the trade-off in dynamic range and quality seems to be well worth it. Now, one of the really nice things about this camera is the ability to bring things back if you overexpose or underexpose your image. You have a lot more flexibility in terms of dynamic range and color information, and the images, even if I looked at them right out of the bat and they looked a little bit overexposed, there was a lot of latitude to bring back a lot of that detail. Definitely a lot more than you would have with the A7 III. So that's a really nice development with this camera, something that's going to be very useful for a lot of my run and gun shooting. Now, a lot of people are saying that this camera is a low light beast, but what's even cooler from my perspective is that you don't even really have to test that out with the dual base ISOs. I'm constantly just swapping between the low base and high base, and I'm never adding in any gain to my image, because for every shoot I'm pretty much bringing lights. But I do love the fact that I do have the flexibility to get a great image even if I'm having to add gain into the image. A lot of people are saying that that looks amazing. I'm gonna drop in a side-by-side low light comparison between the FX9 and the A7 III, just so you can get a little bit of an idea of what the noise level is like and what the color information looks like. So at 320 we're looking pretty similar in terms of noise, but the FX9 looks better from a color perspective. At 1600, the second base ISO, the s-cinetone looks a lot better. And then at 3500, we do introduce a little bit of noise into the FX9, but it still looks cleaner than the A7 III, and the colors look a lot stronger. At 8000 ISO, both cameras have a decent amount of noise, but the FX9 has a finer noise pattern, and it's retaining the colors and detail much better. And then finally at 12,800 ISO, the highest for s-cinetone, it's the same story here. Both cameras have noise, but the FX9 has a finer noise pattern, more color, and a bit more detail. So here's an example of how I might rig this up. I've got this L-shaped cheese plate that goes around the handle. This was designed for the FS7, but it works great on this camera. Then I've got a small rig arm with a Ninja Inferno attached to it. This is a really good setup for doing interviews or for stuff where your camera's on a set of sticks. You can flip it around very easily, move the monitor wherever you need to move it. Not amazing for handheld because it is pretty heavy and bulky, but it's a little bit brighter than the viewfinder that comes with the camera. Bigger display, and you can load in custom LUTs, very easy to view them in this monitor. Okay, so let's talk for a second about battery life and card space. So I have two BPU 60 batteries. The camera comes with a BPU 30 battery, and I'm probably gonna need to buy more batteries or buy a V-mount attachment for this camera. When I shot a wedding, we went through the batteries. I didn't run out of battery because I was charging through most of the day. And then the cards, we have XQD cards. I've got two 240 gigabyte cards. When I shot a wedding, I 100% filled up both cards. So in the future, I'm probably going to have to get one more card just to have the flexibility for a full day shoot. So one thing I do want to talk a little bit about is the autofocus performance. I was very pleased with the autofocus performance. It was very similar to the a7 III, which is obviously a good thing. The a7 III has great face detection autofocus. I do like that I can register faces with the joystick on the hand grip. Now I will say there were a few times where there were multiple faces in the scene and the camera was having trouble distinguishing. I would select one face, and then let's say that face turned to the side, it would kind of lose that face and go to the other face rather than track on that one that I selected. So this may be an issue with the Sigma 85mm f1.4 that I was using. I use the native E-mount version. So far, I've had pretty good results with these Sigma lenses, but that is one thing to kind of check out. The only Sony lens that I own is the 28-135 f4 servo zoom lens. Now, I will say that lens is a good combo with the FX9 because you have the zoom control on the hand grip, so you can very quickly get a lot of different shots. I don't use this lens all that much. I do use it in case I need to get really tight. So it's usually the, safety shot for wedding films when I'm doing the ceremony. Sometimes I'll bust it out if I know I'm switching a lot between going wide and going tight. If I'm doing this E&G style of shooting where I'm just like boom, 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 getting shots, it's a great choice. If you're looking to do more artistic things, then this lens may not be for you, but I do really like the flexibility it offers with the FX9. Something else from a usability standpoint that was really nice is using shutter angle as opposed to shutter speed, because what I noticed was I was forgetting to change my shutter speed when I would switch from 24p to 60p, because in my previous camera I had that dialed into the function dial, so I would know, okay, I'm switching to 120 frames per second, I need to be 1/250th. It would already be dialed in for me when I switched the mode dial. So the solution to that for me was just to use shutter angle instead of shutter speed, so I really never have to touch my shutter angle unless I want to change the look creatively. So sometimes I will lower that from 180 degrees down to 90 degrees to get a scene with more motion, and you want less motion blur and you want it to maybe look a little bit more frantic and action-packed. But it's really more of a creative decision at that point, which I really like. I feel like adjusting all of these settings, you have the ability to change whatever you want from a creative standpoint, which makes a big difference coming from the Alpha series where I was just kind of doing things based on some limitations that I might have with ND filters or lack thereof or low light performance. So this is really nice. I do want to touch briefly on just a couple extra things with this camera in regards to the other types of things I've been shooting with it. It's been great for real estate and for this kind of documentary broadcast TV style look that I've been doing for some internet delivery projects as well. It was great for the corporate shoot I did, more of an interview style. That went really well. No major issues to report back other than to say it is really amazing having the added flexibility of having XLR inputs, having full HDMI capability, having SDI outputs in case I do get hired for some kind of multicam job that requires a camera like this. It just has all of the professional bells and whistles that I was really looking for when I wanted to upgrade from the A7 Mark III. So look out for a full video about me upgrading from the A7 III. I want to run through all of the menus, all of the things that I've kind of learned as I've made that transition from the Alpha series to the higher end Sony series. Anyways guys, that is the FX9. That's my experience so far. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.